Hey guys, my name is Joel Daniel Phillips. I am a draftsman based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to draw a houseplant. So this is actually a two-part video tutorial. The first part, if you haven't watched it yet, my good friend Gabriel Schmitz did a really amazing and heartfelt talk about why drawing is important, particularly now. And so if you haven't watched that yet, I would recommend put a pause, go back in the feed and watch Gabrielle's amazing talk about drawing and its importance in this moment. Once you've done that, come back and I'm going to walk you guys through how to draw a house plant. And so this is what I'm going to be drawing today. This is a cactus that I already have spines all over my hands just from bringing it to my studio. And I chose this cactus for two reasons. First, as Gabrielle talked about, drawing something that has an emotional resonance to you is actually incredibly important because we connect with things. Sometimes they're objects, sometimes they're people, sometimes, they can be a lot of different things. But this cactus, for me, besides the fact that I've gotten a lot of pain out of it over the years because it stabbed me a lot, has a lot of memories attached to it. I found this can in the desert in Joshua Tree on a trip I went on with my fiance, and then the second reason, and this is where I would actually recommend when you're deciding what you want to be drawing, pick something that is fairly simple to start, because this cactus is actually a fairly simple set of shapes. It's also an interesting set of shapes. So look for something you don't want to be drawing, a million leaves when you're walking through this tutorial. You want something that is a relatively simple shape. And if you don't have a houseplant that fits that bill, pick a different object, pick something that means something to you. But something, again, that has that resonance and is also an interesting but relatively simple shape. And now we're gonna walk through how to draw it. Okay, so I have got the three tools you are going to need and a sheet of paper. And in front of me, there's actually the cactus, but you should be able to see that over here on the side. So the three tools are pencils, pen, and some sort of eraser that can be just like a normal pencil on the end of the pencil, or if you've got fancier stuff like me, this is actually a soft rubber eraser that I use in my studio all the time. As far as pencils, I would recommend for the starting point, actually a lighter weight pencil if you have an H or a 2H or something like that, because we're actually going to erase all these lines at the end when we switch to pen. However, I am going to be using a heavyweight pencil so that you can see it from above. So the first part of any drawing process is the block in. And this is a technique that basically simplifies what you're seeing in front of you by breaking it down into easily identifiable shapes to start with, to get kind of the general proportions. So looking at my can, I've actually got basically a rectangle that is the base of the can. And then this big old funky guy on the left here is kind of this weird shape that goes up like yay, and then comes down like that. This other guy over here, it's kind of a shape that goes like this. And this, at this point, we're just doing this really quickly and easily here. I'm gonna kind of reshape the can edge here. And you'll notice I'm using straight lines at this point in the process, even though these are actually all curves. That's because it's easier to see at the beginning kind of some of the larger shape dimensional differences between things when you're starting with straight lines. So now that I've got this kind of basic thing in here, I'm realizing, oh, well, I didn't make my can long enough. I've got to make this guy taller. So I'm going to extend that over here. This guy actually comes farther out to the side, so I'm going to do that and shape it over here. Okay, so I'm starting to build the block in. And now I'm gonna actually erase a little bit of these so I can work on top of it. Hopefully you can still see as I start to make this real. So once we get to this point where you kind of are satisfied with these geometric shapes, this is where we're going to start fine-tuning and creating the actual underdrawing. And my process basically is it's called a block-in, and the idea is that you're going to look and see what are the actual shapes and build more or less a wireframe model with pencil lines here. So that is, going to be something like this. We've got this edge here with that nice cast shadow. That's very important, and I'm going to start using curves instead of these straight lines because I've got my real shapes pretty much decided. And something that I actually think about a lot as I'm working through this is I'm looking not just at what this shape is here, but I look at the edges of things, and I break things down in my own process into where it amounts to negative shapes. So for example, right here in the middle, I'm looking at that kind of crescent moon shape that exists in between the edge of this cactus here and the edge of the lid that's sticking up behind the second cactus. And then over here, we've got kind of this rabbit ear shape that's on the other side of that. And I'm going to define the edge of this cactus, again thinking about this wireframe, building out basically what amounts to a simple line drawing of the edges of every shape that we're seeing. So we've got this guy here in front. This can. The bottom edge of the can is slightly more round than the top of the can because perspective. We're actually looking slightly down at this bottom edge. Hopefully you can see that on the side there as well. And this is where I've basically got my block in more or less complete. This is a pretty messy one, and I've made it darker than I would recommend. However, you should be able to see it from your angle there. And again, I don't know if I mentioned this at the beginning, all of these lines we're actually going to be erasing. So this is a process that when we get to the end, we are going to erase everything but the pen. And so I'm going to clean this up a little bit here just so you can see it a little bit better. But at the end of this process, we're actually going to erase everything. So these pencil lines, you don't have to worry about them at all. This is just the beginning of the process. Diving into step 2 here, I have a micron. This is actually a size 2, which is a thicker tip than I normally use, but hopefully you should be able to see that from above. This is the second part of the process. So we've gone through the block-in, we've gone through creating an actual wireframe where we're happy with our shapes, and now we're going to really dive into the permanent part of the drawing, where we're going to start observing the details and the idiosyncrasies of what we see in front of us. So right now we kind of have this general underdrawing that we're happy with, but all of these pencil lines are going to go away, and we are going to be left at the end with our pen lines, which is what we're going to start putting in now. So I'm actually going to start up with this top cactus guy here, and I'm going to start observing the edges here. And what I think about when I'm working on this sort of a wireframe, I'm thinking about what are the particular weird shapes that I'm looking at. And so, I've got this weird curve that comes in here because I forgot to water my cactus and he's shrinking. He's probably very angry at me. And these edges are these bumps up here at the top of the shape. And this guy is kind of a funky line. And it comes down to here. This guy is another, it's not actually a smooth edge, it's actually pretty bumpy on that back edge there. Comes down, we've got these weird lumps on the edges where these guys will be buried in your skin for days and days if you don't pull them out with the tweezers. Actually, I hate this cactus a lot. I've had endless run-ins with its spines, but I love the shapes the spines make, which is why I keep it around. And as I'm doing this, again, I'm thinking about, breaking down how these different shapes interact with each other, because sometimes it's hard to look at this and think, hey, what is this really look like. Sometimes it's easier to look and say, okay, what's the shape in here and how does it interact? How does this edge of the lid that's sticking up, it creates kind of a crescent moon shape in here in between. So I'm gonna, think about how those interactions happen as I'm starting to lay in my real wireframe. And this is a process that can take you as long as you want. It's a little scary to get going on this part because this is the permanent part. Up to this point we've been doing things that were all erasable, all in pencil, but this for me is the most fun part because you're committing, the pen is kind of making its own decisions, it's creating its own little moments. And when I'm drawing something, especially something organic, I'm actually not too worried about accuracy. I'm more worried about what is the feel of this texture in these shapes. These cactus bumps are kind of lumpy, and so I'm slightly exaggerating some of these moments when I'm drawing it here because I want to get the sense of the cactus. I'm more worried about that than I am about making this cactus exactly like what I see physically in front of me. The edge of this can, I'm going to actually make it a little rougher than it really is. There's a secondary lip here. So we're going to go around like that. And then get these straight edges nice and clean. Here, this bottom lip, coming around, and then we've got this lip on the bottom from a nice rusted tin can. And at this point now, I'm starting to really get a sense of, exactly how this is starting to feel. I've got these edges here. You can see I'm developing my like I said, my wireframe, where you can kind of see that these are a two-dimensional object and the light is coming from this direction over here, and then there's this cast shadow on the back. And in this approach, I'm just creating a line drawing. I'm not going to be coloring in, that shading. I'm not even going to worry about it. I'm just trying to get a sense of that physicality and that dimensionality of these objects here. And I'm going to start doing these little sticker bunches in the middle here. Little jerks, always get my hands. I already poked myself today when I was carrying this to my studio from the house. And again, with stuff like this, I'm not super worried about the exact placement. You'll probably notice that this is not exactly where all these little bumps are. However, they are more about the feeling of the bumps and the organic sense of things. And this is a point in the process where you should be having a lot of fun with it. You're getting into the textures of it. There's that kind of wrinkliness, the sharp pokiness of it. And it's a really fun texture to try to draw. It's pretty simple, but it's got that very particular cactusy feel to it. And I'm gonna actually add a few more spines because I want to make this cactus a little less sad looking and more defensible in the natural world. Okay, so I'm gonna jump ahead here. I would probably add more details if I was just doing this in my studio, but I wanna keep this quick for you guys. I'm gonna call this done, and now we're gonna get to the really fun part of the process here, which is erasing these pencil lines. And the cool part about working with pen on top of pencil is you can just erase everything that's graphite and the pen is gonna stay solid, assuming it's totally dry. So at this point you wanna make sure, rub it a little bit, make sure nothing is smearing. And then we're just gonna go in, I'm gonna use my eraser here, my soft rubber eraser, and really just go at this to get rid of these under drawing lines that are still left over. And you'll start to have this moment where the whole drawing starts to come together because all of these kind of annoying, distracting, sketchy lines at the bottom are getting erased. And that's about as good as I'm going to be able to get it because I used a heavier weight pencil. Again, that's a reason for you to use a lighter weight pencil because it'll actually erase at the beginning, but I was trying to make something you guys could see. So for me, some of this clutter is just going to stay. It's never going to go away. So that's basically the process. Again, it's a 3-step process. It starts with your block in where you use those very, very general shapes and straight line drawings. You then move to a tighter under drawing again with a light pencil. And then finally, over the top, you use your pen and then erase it when you're done. And that was it. I hope you guys got something out of it, and I hope you stay safe and sane and treat each other well out there. See you later.